Welcome to Fazza Poetry World, where hearts turn into poetry. My love, come closer and listen to this story slowly, because tonight the air itself feels different. There are some stories that are not spoken loudly. They are carried in silence, hidden behind palace walls, resting in the soft glow of lanterns and the quiet breath of the night. This is one of those stories. It was the holy month of Ramadan. A month where hearts soften, where prayers rise like light toward the heavens, and where every soul begins to listen more carefully to what is hidden inside. The world outside may remain the same, but inside every heart, something changes. Pain becomes prayer. Silence becomes reflection. Hope becomes stronger than fear. And in those sacred nights, while the moon rested above the city like a silver witness, she sat alone in the quiet corners of the palace. Her face looked calm, almost untouched by worry, but deep inside, storms were moving. Some plans had failed. Some dreams had not unfolded the way she once imagined. Life had taken a turn she did not expect, and now she was left with long nights, quiet thoughts, and questions about tomorrow. The palace around her was filled with family, warmth, and the sacred peace of Ramadan. Voices of loved ones echoed through the halls. The fragrance of dates, rose water, and freshly prepared iftar drifted softly through the air. Everyone around her seemed at peace. Yet within her heart, there was a silence no one could truly hear. Sometimes pain does not cry out. Sometimes it simply sits beside you and waits. She spent more time alone than before. Not because she wanted distance, but because solitude sometimes becomes the only place where truth can be faced. In those moments, she looked toward the future with eyes full of questions. What comes next? What path should be chosen now? What door will open after the ones that closed? Then, as if fate itself had decided to stir the stillness, an important guest arrived. The palace gates opened, and footsteps entered carrying both respect and quiet significance. It was MRM. The moment his arrival was announced, attention shifted. People noticed. People wondered. In places like these, every meeting carries meaning, and every word can shape what follows. When he entered, he carried himself with grace and humility. There was no arrogance in his manner, only respect. When he greeted her, his words were gentle, and his presence was calm. He showed her honor, as one should in a family bound by tradition, dignity, and mutual regard. Their conversation began simply. At first, it seemed ordinary. A few respectful words. A few questions about health, family, and Ramadan. The kind of conversation that lives on the surface. But sometimes the most important moments begin in the most ordinary ways. As they continued speaking, something changed in her thoughts. A new idea began to form quietly in the back of her mind. Sometimes decisions are not born in loud moments, they arrive in silence, growing stronger with every passing second. She looked at him and began to think beyond the present moment. She saw possibility. She saw influence. She saw support that might matter in the days ahead. And then, slowly, carefully, she began to guide the conversation toward a more delicate path. Her words did not reveal her intention immediately. She moved gently, speaking with patience, almost as if testing the waters before stepping further in. Then she mentioned someone close to the family. A cousin. Someone of similar age. Someone she believed could be the perfect match. The air between them changed. MRM listened. He remained polite, as respect demanded. But inside, discomfort began to rise. There are moments when the heart speaks before the lips do. His silence carried more truth than words ever could. He was not prepared for such a conversation. He had not come expecting this. And yet, because respect was deeply rooted in him, he did not refuse harshly. He did not interrupt. He did not show displeasure. Instead, he listened quietly. But inside, his heart was unsettled. As soon as the meeting ended, he left with thoughts racing through his mind. His steps were calm, but his mind was filled with confusion. He knew he needed guidance. So he made his way to Sheikh Hamdan's palace. The night outside was peaceful. Ramadan lights shimmered softly across the roads, and the city glowed with the warmth of prayer and family gatherings. But inside him, there was restlessness. When he arrived, fate had arranged another turn in the story. Sheikh Hamdan was not there. Instead, Shama was present. She welcomed him warmly, with the kind of grace that immediately brings comfort to an anxious heart. There was kindness in her presence, and perhaps that is why he felt safe enough to speak openly. Trust is a rare thing. And that night, he placed his trust in her. He told her everything. Every word of the conversation. Every uncomfortable pause. Every fear that he might hurt someone by refusing. Shama listened. Not once did she interrupt. Not once did she react with haste. She listened with calm wisdom. Then, without delay, she reached out to Sheikh Hamdan and explained the entire matter clearly. His response was firm. He instructed that the proposal should be politely refused. The message was simple, respectful, and clear. When Shama conveyed this to MRM, he still hesitated. Because some people carry too much kindness in their hearts. They worry not only about themselves but about the feelings of everyone around them. He feared causing hurt. He feared creating distance within the family. And Shama saw that. Sometimes strength arrives in the form of someone who speaks for you when your own heart is too burdened to do so. Without hesitation, she took his phone. Her voice was confident. Her words were direct. She called and made it clear that he was not interested in the proposal. There was no confusion. No uncertainty, no room for pressure. Before any further words could be exchanged, the call ended. And in that moment, she protected him. not with noise, not with anger, but with courage. Some people save you not from danger, but from decisions that do not belong to your heart. That night, gratitude settled deeply within him. Because MRM had always believed in love. Not in compulsion. Not in obligation. He believed that the person who shares your life should first be chosen by your heart. Love, to him, was never something that should be arranged by pressure. It should be discovered, felt, chosen. Later, when the sun had set and the call to Maghrib prayer had spread through the evening sky, the world transformed into the beautiful softness of iftar. Tables were prepared. Dates were placed carefully in bowls. The sweetness of traditional desserts filled the rooms. The aroma of warm food wrapped itself around the palace like a comforting embrace. Families gathered. Laughter returned. The sacred peace of Ramadan settled everywhere. And once again, MRM arrived at the palace. This time, he carried sweets in his hands. Not just sweets. A gesture of gratitude. A small token for the one who stood by him when he needed courage. Shama received them with warmth. Then, in one of those beautiful moments that make life lighter, Sheikh Hamdan noticed. With a playful smile, he asked, "Where are my sweets?" For a moment, silence. Then MRM smiled and replied, "These are not for you." And suddenly the room filled with laughter. The heaviness of the earlier events dissolved. What was once tension became joy. What was once worry became togetherness. And perhaps that is the true beauty of Ramadan. It teaches us that even after difficult moments, there can still be smiles. Even after confusion, there can still be peace. Even after silence, there can still be laughter. The evening ended in warmth. Smiles were shared. Hearts felt lighter. The palace, once filled with quiet uncertainty, now echoed with happiness. And under the sacred Ramadan moon, everything felt softer. Because in the end, family is not only about blood. It is about protection, support, respect, and standing beside one another when it matters most. This was not just a story of a proposal refused. It was a story of courage. A story of choice. A story of dignity. And above all, it was a story of hearts finding peace in the blessed nights of Ramadan. If you want, I can continue this into part 2 in full fazza emotional palace romance style, even longer and deeper, almost like a dramatic storytelling poem. My love, the story did not end that night. Because some moments may pass, but their echoes stay. After the laughter faded and the sweetness of iftar slowly dissolved into the calm of the night, something deeper remained in the air. Not everyone could feel it, but those who carry silence in their hearts always do. The palace lights dimmed softly, and the world outside grew quieter. Ramadan nights have a strange beauty. They don't just bring peace, they reveal truths. And somewhere within those grand walls, she sat again, alone. Yes, she smiled earlier. Yes, she looked calm in front of everyone. But now, with no one watching, the silence returned. Because strength in public often hides vulnerability in private. She replayed the moment in her mind. The call. The refusal. The sudden ending. It was not the rejection itself that stayed with her, it was how quickly things slipped out of her control. For someone who had always moved with certainty, this felt unfamiliar. Her thoughts became deeper. Was this the right step? Did I move too fast? Or was I simply trying to secure something before everything slips away? Sometimes, we don't chase control because we are strong. We chase it because we are afraid of losing everything. And that night, she wasn't planning a proposal anymore. She was planning her next move in life. Because now she understood something clearly, not everyone can be guided. Some people choose their own path no matter the pressure, no matter the expectations. And M.R.M. was one of those people. Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, under the same sky, M.R.M. stood near the balcony. The cool night breeze touched his face, but his thoughts were still heavy. Yes, he laughed. Yes, he smiled. But deep inside, he was still processing everything. Because moments like these don't just end, they stay inside you for a while. He looked up at the sky. Ramadan moon shining quietly above, and he whispered to himself, I did the right thing, didn't I? Because sometimes, even when you follow your heart, you still question yourself. But then he remembered something. Not pressure. Not expectation. But love. The kind of love he always believed in. The kind you choose. The kind that finds you naturally, not through arrangement, not through influence. And slowly, his heart felt lighter. Because deep down, he knew one truth. A forced path never leads to peace. And far from him, Shama stood by the window. Watching everything. Understanding more than she ever said. Some people don't need to speak loudly to be powerful. Their actions speak enough. She knew what she did earlier was bold. She knew it might create waves. But she also knew something more important. Sometimes protecting someone means standing between them and a decision they are too kind to refuse. She didn't regret it. Not even for a second. Because in her heart, she believed. Respect should never silence your truth. And that night, she chose truth. As the night moved deeper, the palace slowly fell into complete silence. But silence doesn't mean stillness. Because behind closed doors, behind calm faces, new decisions were being formed. New strategies were being built. And new emotions were quietly growing. The next morning arrived with the soft light of Ramadan. A new day. But not a simple one. Because after every decision, comes consequence. Whispers began to move. Not loud. Not obvious. But in places like this, nothing stays hidden for long. People notice the change. The energy. The subtle distance. Some understood. Some guessed. Some simply watched. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones no one speaks about openly. And she had changed. Not visibly, but internally. She was no longer thinking emotionally. She was thinking strategically. Because now she knew. If one door closes, you don't stand there waiting. You find another way. But this time, she would move differently. More carefully. More quietly. More powerfully. And somewhere in her thoughts, one idea remained. This is not the end, this is just a pause. Meanwhile, M.R.M. made a silent promise to himself. No matter what happens next, he will not compromise on love. Not for comfort. Not for pressure. Not even for peace. Because real peace comes from choosing what your heart accepts. And as the days of Ramadan continued, everything looked normal again. Family gatherings. Shared meals. Smiles. But beneath that normalcy, something had shifted forever. Because one moment, one call, one decision, can change the direction of many lives. And my love, this story is not just about them. It is about every heart that stands at a crossroad between respect and truth, expectation and desire, silence and courage. Some choose silence. Some choose sacrifice. But some choose themselves. And that choice changes everything.